It's 9 o'clock.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It's Wednesday, October 5th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 5 degrees, 3 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Gas prices, as we told you, did go up at midnight by a dime a litre, and they're scheduled for another pretty significant hike tonight. With the details, here's City News reporter Carl Hansky.
I told you yesterday it was going to happen, and it did happen. Gas prices rose 10 cents overnight. You'll find the average price now about just under $1.63 a litre. They're expected to go up another 6 cents tonight, up to about $1.69. That means come this time tomorrow morning, a 50-litre fill-up will cost you about $8 more than what it did yesterday. I'll be talking to drivers this morning. Now, out in the Vancouver area, the average price of gas around $2.30 a litre. Carl Hansky, City News.
Now, more coming up on gas prices on the Rob Snow Show coming up shortly. City News time 9:01. Now your forecast. Here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We'll climb to the high 22 degrees today. Lots of sunshine. Tonight mainly clear and 9. And tomorrow rain moves in overnight. So mostly cloudy through the day. Still quite warm at 22. That's the high today, 22.
And right now 5 degrees in Ottawa, 3 degrees in Smiths Falls. Financial plans of leading candidates for mayor are starting to come into focus this week. Mike Maguire this morning proposing a tax freeze in the first year of council should he be elected mayor, and then a financial review for the year following. Mark Sutcliffe will announce his tax plan at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Catherine McKinney's plan will come out tomorrow. Now, Bob Chiarelli has this morning reiterated his plan to freeze taxes in year one. He's also calling out both the Sutcliffe and McKinney campaigns for making what he termed wild spending promises, and he says their plans are just for show. It is the final lame duck sitting of Ottawa City Council today, the final sitting of this session. Expect a full house -1. Keith Eglai has passed on his regrets. He'll miss that meeting. A number of minor issues on the agenda today, since spending is restricted on some issues due to that provincial lame duck label for council. That was given when not enough councillors were reoffering in the October 24th election. Opposition parties in Ontario say newly announced energy programs do not replace those cut by the provincial government. They say the axed programs include incentives for buying energy-efficient heating and cooling equipment and energy efficiency incentives for new buildings. Criticism comes after the provincial government announced yesterday it's rolling out new and expanded energy programs starting next year. One of the programs would pay an incentive to a homeowner with a smart thermostat who volunteers to let the power system operator turn down their central air remotely during peak demand on some summer days. Overseas, European Union is still looking at ways dealing with the energy crisis resulting from the war in Ukraine.
EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen saying Russian President Vladimir Putin has been using energy as a weapon, causing economic and social hardship.
We will strengthen our cooperation with NATO and with key partners like the United States on this critical issue.
Von der Leyen also touting the fact that the EU has diminished its gas consumption by around 10%, but she says that's not enough. Inez de la Cuetara, ABC News, at the Foreign Desk.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Bad or complicated.
There's no news in Ottawa and the Valley he won't talk about.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So it looks like Elon Musk is actually going to buy Twitter. Maybe. It looks that way, but who knows with that guy. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News and Rogers TV. Thank you for joining us. It is Wednesday, October 5th. Bit of a bite in the air out there. Starting to feel decidedly autumnal in the weather here in Ottawa. It's autumn now. It's fall. The summer days are behind us. And yeah, big news this morning in the financial media. Elon Musk has done another 180 degrees on his bid to buy Twitter and now says he'll go through with the deal. They actually halted Twitter shares on the market yesterday when the rumors first surfaced. Twitter stock is up about 12% pre-market trading today. Last time I looked, about $51 a share. If the deal goes through, that stock jumps to $54 a share. Tesla shares down about 1% in pre-market today, probably on fears that Musk may have to dump more of his shares in order to make up the $33 billion in liquidity he needs for the Twitter deal. We'll keep an eye on that throughout the morning for you. But I have to say, looking at the markets this morning, the number that caught my eye was 92. That is $92 a barrel for Brent ICE crude, one of the big oil futures, back up over $90 this morning. West Texas Intermediate lagging a bit behind, but still up. Today, just shy of $87 a barrel. And this comes as we watch and wait to see what OPEC will do with its outputs. If you're just joining us, this is why the price at the pumps shot up 10 cents overnight. The latest from Reuters on that, Dateline Vienna, October 5th. OPEC Plus looks set for deep cuts to its oil output targets when it meets on Wednesday, curbing supply in an already tight market despite pressure from the United States and others to pump more. The potential OPEC Plus cut could spur a recovery in oil prices that have dropped to about $90 from $120 3 months ago due to fears of a global economic recession, rising U.S. interest rates, and a stronger dollar. I do not like the sound of that. Are we heading back to $2 a liter? I should hope not. Good Lord. Good Lord, can we catch a break, please, on the cost of living? So coming up in a few minutes here, I'll be joined again by Dan McTagg, gas price analyst, president of the advocacy group Canadians for Affordable Energy. And my goodness, we could use some affordable energy right about now. Dan will give us the latest on how the market is reacting to the OPEC news, and I'll ask him for his outlook on gas prices into the fall and winter. I think we're heading for some tough economic times. I find it hard to imagine that we aren't going to see some kind of recession in early 2023. I think the narrative has now changed from, is it going to be a recession, to how bad is the recession going to be? I am anxious. I will admit to you, good listeners, that I, much like many other young people, suffer from economic anxiety. I am anxious about the economy, and I think you should be too. Do a quick Google News search for the word recession this morning. I dare ya. Not a pretty picture at all. Not at all. The cost of living and inflation has been a hot topic all week long. Last week, too, in the House of Commons, the Conservatives absolutely hammering the Trudeau government over increases to EI premiums and CPP contributions coming January 1st, 2023, not far from now. If you're not in the loop on that, there will be more deductions off your paycheck starting in the new year as we all contribute more to employment insurance and the Canada Pension Plan. Are these technically, quote-unquote, taxes? Well, smart people can argue about that. For my purposes, yes, they're taxes. To me, anytime the government takes your money away to spend on something else, even when you can theoretically get that money back via government programs, it's a tax. So it's a tax hike. The carbon tax, don't call it a tax, pardon me. The price on pollution, the price that we make polluters pay, also going up next year, $15 next year and the year after that and the year after that until it hits $1.70 a ton by 2030. When the Liberals brought in their carbon pricing scheme in 2016, they said it would never go above $50 a ton. They lied, but we don't need to rehash that. Carbon tax and EI premiums and CPP premiums all going up next year. And the official opposition Conservative Party under their new leader, Pierre Poilievre, doing their very best to hold the government's feet to the fire on these increases. I want to play you a little highlight from Question Period on Tuesday, featuring Calgary Nose Hill Conservative MP Michelle Rempel Garner. Let's take a listen here. Roll tape.
They failed failed to repatriate manufacturing. They've failed to inspire investment in our country, and they are making it harder for women in my community to put loaves of bread in their cart. And I've had enough. And people in this place have had enough, Mr. Speaker. And people across this country have had enough. So I challenge every Liberal backbencher here today. Tomorrow morning is their caucus meeting, to stand up and say what that one person said off the record to a reporter. Enough with the woke. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I take that back. I apologize for my unparliamentary language immediately. I'm very sorry. Enough with the woke stuff.
That's better.
And get on with the plan. And it's right to be passionate with this, because we have to do better things to protect Canadians from inflation.
Spicy. One more time. One more time. Just the good bit there, Noah.
Enough with the woke. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I take that back.
One more time. Come on, one more.
Enough with the woke. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I take that back.
Good on you, Michelle. Keep fighting the good fight. I'd be happy if she was my MP. Yeah. Tensions. They are arising. Still ahead on the show this morning after the 9:30 news. We'll be joined by two of the best political strategists in the business. Cam Holmstrom and Tim Powers will score our political fix. We do that every Wednesday morning around here. Your midweek update on what all the movers and shakers in Canada's political elite are up to. And one of the big stories this week comes from our friends at Blacklock's Reporter. Our federal public safety minister, Marco Mendicino, caught red-handed doing something decidedly not very ministerial. Uh-oh, Marco, uh-oh. Headline from Blacklock's Reporter, Minister backdates document. You'll have to subscribe to Blacklock's if you want to read the whole thing, but here's a little preview of the first couple paragraphs. Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino backdated government documents in an apparent bid to mislead a federal judge, records show. Access to information files in the case date from 2020 when Mendicino was Minister of Immigration. Quote, things are on fire over here, and quote, an assistant director of immigration wrote in one staff email at the time. Mendicino, a lawyer, would not respond to questions. Tune in after 9:30 this morning to find out what that's all about and hear some insiders weigh in on whether this will stick to Mendicino. There are already calls for his resignation online. And after the 10 o'clock news, we'll do the Talk Back Hour. We do that every day on this show from 10 to 11 o'clock. It's an hour of your phone calls, an hour of your opinions. It's our view into the community to hear directly from you on how the local issues are impacting your life. And this morning, I want to do kind of an unofficial poll on the municipal election. Have you voted yet? Advanced voting is on. Have you voted yet? Or at least have you decided who to vote for? Why? Why did you make that decision? Especially when it comes to the mayor's race. I'm very curious to see how many people have made up their minds and how many people are still sitting on the fence. It is my suspicion that there are many of you quietly fence-sitting out there right now with less than 20 days to go before the vote. And that's where I'm at. I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't endorse any candidate on the air even if I had decided, but I have to tell you, so far, I'm a little underwhelmed by this campaign. This is supposed to be a change election, right? So far, much of what I've heard from the candidates is just not knocking my socks off. I'll have more to say on that after the 10 o'clock news, but that's our question for today. Have you decided who to vote for? Or are you still on the fence? And why or why not? I especially want to hear from you if you are on the fence. If you're on the fence with me, let's support each other. We can do this. We can figure it out. Just give me a call after the 10 o'clock news. 613-750-1310. And speaking of the municipal election, a developing story this morning we are following coming out of the race for Osgoode Ward. Doug Thompson, formerly the councillor of Osgoode Ward, running again this year, is accusing the incumbent councillor, George DeRuse, of campaigning using municipal funds, using his office budget. In a letter sent to the media yesterday, Thompson outlines a complaint he has filed to the city clerk about the DeRuse campaign. I have it here. for immediate release, October 4th. This was yesterday afternoon. Doug Thompson, former councillor for Osgoode Ward and a candidate for election, sent a letter to the city clerk regarding the conduct of incumbent George DeRuse. George DeRuse billed $3,305 to the taxpayer via his constituency services budget for his tent with large DeRuse lettering, and subsequently campaigned this past weekend at the Metcalfe Fair using this tent. Quote from Doug Thompson, "I've been campaigning for years, and it's well known by all candidates that you just can't use your office budget for any campaign-related stuff. It's common sense." End quote. Thompson has requested that the city clerk intervene to prevent DeRuse continuing to use taxpayer resources, i.e. the tent. He says the campaigns of the other candidates have also had their interests harmed by the incident. So our reporter Chris Curries is on that story for City News this morning. We are working to get a response from the DeRuse campaign, and Doug Thompson himself will join me here on the Rob Snow Show at about 11:20 a.m. this morning and explain why he's made this complaint to the city clerk. It's going to be a busy morning. Buckle up, folks. This is David Smith filling in for Rob Snow right here on the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
Closed captioning is brought to you in part by Raven Reads. Unbox Indigenous voices. Subscribe today at ravenreads.org.
It was our 35th anniversary. To celebrate, we were on our way to Mama Rosie's, where we had our first date. That's when we heard coming from the radio. So we stopped and listened. It helped us get to safety. So when I think of our anniversary, because now we have even more to celebrate.
Jean-Marie! Fire! The neighbor's farm is on fire! It's almost to the road! It's heading for us!
Help me get the animals out of the barn!
The fire's getting closer!
I'm on the horse!
The house is burning!
Get out to the river! Get up!
We can't leave everything! Careful! Don't fall!
Come on! We have to hurry!
I'm afraid! There's the river! We're going to make it! I can't swim!
Yes, you can!
Hurry! Hurry!
You must get in!
I can't!
Watch out for Spark!
His hair's on fire!
Keep the hair wet!
In May 1870, fires raged along the Saguenay River for more than 150 kilometers, destroying land and lives. One family survived by dousing themselves all night against the searing heat. One family, among the thousands whose resourcefulness and courage shaped the character of this land.
Hi, I'm Sahai from The Wiggles, and this is my new book, Something in Common. Join me on an adventure as a camp counselor helping some amazing children make friends and share what family means to them. I wrote this book with my friends at Children's Aid Foundation of Canada to help children who might feel lonely or like they don't belong. Not everyone has the same type of family, but we all have something in common. Download Something in Common for free.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
What are we doing about COVID? Seems like the communications have been all about how everything's opening up, and yet here in Ottawa we're experiencing our 7th wave, so a bit of a contradiction there.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the show. David Smith here, filling in for Rob Snow. If you were driving around the city this morning and you happened to take a look at the price at the pumps, my apologies to you. Probably quite a shock. I filled up yesterday I tried not to look at the sign on the way in. I did. It was $1.68, I think, down here at Conroy. Painful, really painful. Starting to rethink road trip plans again. Here we go again. So the gas price, top story this morning, of course, along with inflation, along with interest rates, now the gas price shooting back up again. Why? Why is this happening? Why again? That's why I called Dan McTagg, who joins me on the line now. Good morning, Dan.
Yes, great morning. Just stay away from gas station and driving.
Yeah, just stay put. If you just stay put, it's a good morning,
Yeah.
I guess, if you don't have to drive for a living.
2 years ago.
Yeah. So Dan McTagg is with Canadians for Affordable Energy, former MP, gas price analyst. So just for, to start here, Dan, what is the outlook, you think, for the short to near term? Is this sort of a one and done jump, or are we going to see subsequent jumps throughout the week?
I think everybody's going to be waiting to see what happens in Vienna right now as the energy ministers for OPEC assemble. They've been in meetings now for over an hour. There's an expectation, David, that there's going to be a cut of about 1.8 million barrels of production a day. Now, there's a number of caveats to that, but it comes at a time in which, like it or not, the world is still short of oil, about 2 million barrels. So, up until now, it hasn't been really thought of much since June, July, as prices dropped. The Biden administration dipped into the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, used up almost half of that. They're at levels they haven't seen in terms of storage going back to 1984. If a crisis were truly to happen, it would really put the United States, and I suspect the rest of the world, in a bit of a pickle. Only because there wouldn't be enough more than 21 days before the U.S. would effectively have no more oil. The other problem, of course, is that you have to buy it back. They may have bought it for $30, $40, $50 a barrel, but they're going to have to buy it back at $80 or $90 a barrel. And a lot of what they gave away was heavy oil. That's critical to making diesel, heating fuel, and of course jet fuel. But those first two items are important because during the winter you use a lot more of it. So I think we're dealing with a moment of reflection that traders have to look at. Energy traders have to stop looking at recessions, inflation, all these other things, and start dealing with fundamentals. There isn't enough supply out there, and that's why these prices are likely to go much higher than what we're seeing today, although there could be a bit of a pause. Again, like everyone else who's involved with this, I have to see what's going to come out of OPEC over the next several hours.
Why is OPEC then looking at a production cut? Why are they looking to cut?
I think they're very concerned that the dysfunctional market is currently trashing the price of energy in favor of all sorts of, banal headlines that, are important, but they certainly don't address what is their issue, the fundamentals, supply and demand. It's nice to talk about COVID lockdowns in China and that may have a potential for, slowing down demand. It's okay to talk about a recession, around the world and higher interest rates. And the reality is that demand is still very strong and likely to get stronger year after year after year. I think OPEC is saying they deserve $90 a barrel for oil, and they're going to get $90 a barrel. And if you don't like that, well, North America, maybe you get back in the business of producing oil, and rather than worrying about ESG mandates, so the environment, social, and governance mandates, and finding cute, trendy ways to divest from oil, maybe it's up to you, North Americans and Europeans, to go figure out that rather than this big green transition you keep talking about, reality is telling you a very different story. But don't take our word for it. We're simply going to look after our clients, our customers, which tends to be in Asia. You guys are on your own, and that's primarily what's happening. We're about to get a major shock once again. Many of us were accustomed to $1.30, $1.40 for a liter of gasoline, a little less, a little more for diesel. All that is about to change. And for a country like Canada, blessed with an abundance of energy, third largest provable reserves in the world, the fact that we offer hydrogen rather than natural gas to Europe and to other parts of the world is a story that I think OPEC members are taking notice of and saying, fine, you don't want to produce, we're not going to do it for you. We're not going to sell your wheat.
Mm-hmm. So let's say it's 1.8 million barrels this afternoon, the way that we think it's going to be. What could that do to the price of the pump here in Ottawa? Could we see $2 again?
Yes, easily, but not overnight. This is going to be gradual, and it will be, contrasted against more response by what the rest of the country, what the rest of the Western world, North America, does. The big issue here is, will Joe Biden, in order to save his Congress, because this is really about the midterms, and the United States, unlike Canada, really takes gas prices very seriously. That's not a disparaging remark. It's really to point out, I worked on both sides of the border in terms of my past experience with gasoline. Americans take energy prices very seriously, and they're not going to be coaxed into believing that they should pay more to achieve a certain goal on the climate agenda. Unlike Canadians, Americans will vote accordingly, and $4 a gallon is definitely a vote killer for Joe Biden. So the question is, will he continue to release 1 million barrels a day past the end of this month and draw that strategic petroleum reserve down to extraordinarily dangerous levels at a time in which the world is in crisis, or will he have to be forced to buy back? And if he does have to buy back, remember, he's given 400,000, I get that number right. He's given away 400 million barrels of oil, 300 to 400 million. That's pretty substantial. And to now demand that the market pay that back, it's not going to end very well. I think that's why prices here in Ottawa could move back towards $2 a liter sometime between now the beginning of January. Also in the equation, small factor, but there are two of them, David. One, does the province of Ontario continue its 6-cent rebate or 6-cent drop on the gas tax, and will the Canadian dollar continue to languish? I believe both things are also going to materially affect the price we pay by the end of this year.
Is there a policy response you can think of from our government here in Canada, either at the provincial level, in addition to the gas tax cut, or at the federal level? Is there a policy response that you can think of that would provide some relief for consumers at the pump?
Well, sure. Cut the carbon tax. No more 11.5 times 13%, so no more 12.5 cent a liter taxation. Second of all, intend and make a declaration that you plan to build a pipeline east and a pipeline west. Not that that's going to happen with the current Liberals and their NDP enablers, but an announcement on that alone would probably see the Canadian dollar surge, match the U.S. dollar. That would save you 30 cents a liter. So between canceling the carbon tax at 12.5, making a decision on pipelines, which I think the world needs desperately, you'd probably see the Canadian dollar come back to parity with the U.S. greenback. That would save another 30, maybe even 40 cents a liter between those two. You could drop prices pretty much over the next several weeks, probably about 40 to 50 cents a liter, but that's not going to happen. And until people feel the pain and connect it to the policies pursued by their federal government, they're going to continue to pay through the nose at the hose.
That's our time for this morning. Thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate your coming on the show.
Good to be here. Have a great Thanksgiving to all you and your listeners, David.
You as well. Thank you.
Cheers.
That was Dan McTagg, Canadians for Affordable Energy gas price analyst, former MP. 9:28 here on the Rob Snow Show. David Smith filling in. Don't go anywhere after the 9:30 news. We'll score our political fix. This is David Smith filling in on the Rob Snow Show right here on Rogers TV and City News.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
I mean, one of the major issues I think that, especially walking around in the market area, is housing. Housing security for those who are not going to be able to benefit from all of the development that we're doing. So what is the city's response? How can we use some of the properties that we do have power to control and satisfy the needs for those who are housing insecure?
$20. Hi, I'm Maggie. Come into my kitchen. When you're using salt in a recipe, check for saltiness. Not all salts are equal. A fine grained salt is a lot more salty than a large grain salt because that takes longer to get into the food. Bum, 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 bum. $20. $20. Down the
the houseless crisis, because it really is a crisis down here on Rideau Street. There is not enough shelters for men especially, and we need to be helping our most vulnerable.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Wednesday, October 5th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 10 degrees. In Smiths Falls, 9. Here's what's making news this hour. With under 3 weeks to the civic election, leading candidates for mayor in Ottawa fine-tuning their pitch to you. Mike Maguire says he would freeze property tax if elected mayor. That would be for the first year. Mark Sutcliffe will be releasing his property tax plan this afternoon. Catherine McKinney does the same tomorrow. Now, Bob Chiarelli today reintroduced his plan. That calls for a freeze in year 1 and then, like Maguire, a review of the city expenses. He feels both the Sutcliffe and McKinney plans have wild spending, which he says are just for show. Gas prices continue the steep climb that began last night with 10 cents a litre more. Tonight at midnight, another 6 cent a litre increase. Dan McTagg, president of Canadians for Affordable Energy, tells the Rob Snow Show this morning that we could gradually head toward $2 a litre again, but that does depend on a number of factors. More challenge for Eastern Canada, a widespread skilled labour shortage and the rising cost of construction material, slowing down recovery from the post-tropical storm Fiona. Atlantic Canada combating an already tough market. The Nova Scotia Public Works Minister says that province has already cancelled 6 existing bridge and road projects this year, and that was all due to higher than expected costs. City News Time, 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News 1011 FM.
and 1310 AM.
And the markets have just opened. The Dow is down almost 300 points. Energy stocks are up. S&P coming off biggest 2-day gain in 2 years. Tumult on the markets as we wait to see what happens with OPEC and oil production later this afternoon. 9:32 here on the Rob Snow Show. This is David Smith filling in. It is time to score our political fix. And joining me on the line, 2 of the best political strategists in the business. Tim Powers, Chair, Summa Strategies. Good morning, Tim.
Listen, Dave, good morning to you. The markets are in tumult because you've kicked the icon off the airwaves in your hosting today. And it's not the global affairs. It's you, buddy.
Listen. If the title of Opinionated Ottawa Icon is up for grabs, I will humbly take it. Cam Holmstrom is here as well, Principal Nipaway Strategies. Hello, Cam.
Hello there. I feel the butterfly wings going here. This seems like a ripple effect that's going to change a lot of stuff, David. So I hope you're ready for what comes because this is on your shoulders.
Okay, well, I'll take credit, or if there's blame, then look somewhere else. Listen, let's get right to our political fix here. Freedom Convoy politics, kind of a theme for us today. There was a really interesting opinion piece by Daryl Bricker, CEO of Ipsos Public Affairs, the polling firm. This was for Global News over the weekend, and my reading of this is basically Daryl is making the argument that the Liberal Party's best strategy in the next federal election is to hammer Pierre Poilievre on the Freedom Convoy. So they did a poll, and basically it says 17% of Canadians say they're more likely to vote for the Conservatives because of Poilievre's support for the truckers. 41% say less likely to vote, for the Conservatives because of Poilievre's position, but most importantly, 41% said Poilievre's stance is not going to impact on their future vote. So the Liberals, Darrell Bricker argues, based on this poll, are going after that 41% who just can't ever consider voting for Pierre Poilievre because of his stance on the truckers. Cam, I'd like to start with you. What's your take on this piece from Darrell Bricker? I think there might be something to that.
I can't disagree with it. It can't be the whole thing, though. It will definitely be part of the conversation because, to my mind, it'd be political malpractice not to point it out. Like, let's remember what that was going on at that time, right? Like, the fact is there were elements of that group that were calling for the overthrow of the democratically elected government of the country. If you are running to be prime minister, as Mr. Poilievre, the state shortly after, if that's what you backed, even if you didn't explicitly back all elements, you were there. You were giving it comfort and the whole 9 yards. I'm sorry, you've got to point that out. Now, if you're the prime minister running again, you have to have more to say than that. And if that's all it is, then you know what? Then the Liberals are going to have some problems. But to me, when you're trying to build trust as a leader, and that's part of trying to be the idea of pass the reins of government from him to me, it's a fair point to point out, well, I need to talk about your judgment then and where it takes you, because that's a legitimate point to raise. And honestly, it's not good for our democracy for that not to be brought up. I think in a healthy democracy, you point that out, especially when we have people who are running for public office who have moved so far outside the democratic norms that they saw political advantage in doing that. So to me, it's fair game to put it out there, but if that's all they've got, then they've got big problems.
Well, that's what Darrell Bricker is saying here, Cam. Basically, the last line says, nearly a decade in power has left the Liberals with little else to work with. That's why this may be the focus of the campaign. The focus of the campaign. You think that you're not willing to go quite that far right now, it sounds.
Not quite yet. Okay. Honestly, the next campaign is going to be at least 2 years away. There's a lot of stuff that can happen between now and then. And frankly, this is where the government actually has to get to work. I mean, I've said this now for the last little while. At the end of the day, this government's be judged on what it does and actually responding to the needs of people. Dealing with inflation, dealing with our healthcare system, talking about these things. If they're doing nothing to help that, and they've done nothing to advance those things, and that's all they're left with, that's their own doing at that point. That's their own fault. Okay. The fact is they've got time to actually do some of this stuff, and if they have someone put in the window, I think it helps repair some of that damage that some of their more failed policies have brought out.
And Tim Powers with Summa Strategies, over to you. What do you make of the argument in this op-ed by Darrell Bricker?
It certainly has some merit. Look, Dave, there was another poll, what was it, 3 weeks ago, maybe, I think Nanos, and the figure was 70% of people were a bit suspicious of anybody who had supported the convoy, and that pertaining to future political implications. I would say two things. I agree that this will be a theme. There's a risk there for the Liberals, though, and that is the Prime Minister overreaching and getting preachy and wokey, which, as we know, makes him vulnerable. The other side of that is, you said there's 41% who aren't supportive of anybody who's cheered on the convoy. I'm paraphrasing Darrell here. There's still a bunch of people that are. Who see some of themselves in the irritants that the convoy was bringing.
Well, 17%.
Lawlessness. Sorry?
17% of the respondents say they were more likely to vote for Poilievre because of his stance on the truckers.
Yeah, look, I think it framed the correct way, and Cam was hinting at that and said it directly. In fact, it's about your ability to lead, right? It's one thing to cheerlead and fan the flames of discontent and opposition. It's another to lead. So it will be a question of Poilievre's leadership credentials. The time also works in his favor. If it is, in fact, going to be 2 years, he has time to come to address this, and perhaps this recedes in people's memories. It won't for those of us who live in this region, but for the rest of the country, this may all just be irrelevant in 2 years' time or 3 years' time when the election happens.
2 years from now, who cares? Who cares about the convoy? We have problems now. I can see that happening for sure. Yeah. But sticking with you for a sec here, Tim, before we go back to Cam, in the Conservative side of things, in their war room, do you think they were already working on that strategy? How do we explain Pierre Poilievre's position on the truckers?
Yeah, I think you're seeing it not directly stated, but in behavior. If you notice, he's not saying smartly, finally, anything about crypto and some of the things that got him in trouble. We're going to get to the Bank of Canada in a minute. That's slightly different. But he's focusing on, if you listen to all of his comments, they're about individuals and families and what they're paying and how inflation is costing them and hurting their families. So he's trying to avoid it by making the subject of his narrative right now, I'm there for you, average Canadian, and the pain that you feel. So I think avoidance and deflection is the approach they're taking right now.
Okay. Cam Holmstrom, on the theme of Freedom Convoy politics, the Prime Minister will be called to testify at the Emergencies Act inquiry. No surprises there, but that hit the news this week. What's at stake here for Prime Minister Trudeau? How does he prepare for something like that?
Well, to me, this is the point of the exercise of having done this, right? Like, to me, this was the thing that was said at the time, that when this act was changed, right, from the War Measures Act to this was put in to ensure that accountability. So now is that time to go up there and just basically lay it out, be honest, and back up whatever you said, right? Like, to me, that's the point of this whole exercise. So to me, in theory, it should be pretty straightforward for the Prime Minister when it comes to that, and his ministers that go before the committee. Is like, look, go up there and tell the truth, right? You can defend yourself in this circumstance, and honestly, with a lot that's been said so far, I think they can defend most of what was done and said at the time. So and you can do that and keep it from becoming a political circus. I guess to me, how this really goes depends on how the opposition parties decide to treat this, right? If you're treating it as a genuine review of what happened, right, and actually maybe sucking some of the partisanship out of it, I think it could be a very good exercise and make them look better. If this turns into every convoy talking point brought to life and brought into that room, I think the Prime Minister would welcome that. I think he'd welcome to see and I don't think he'd take the bait, but I think he'd be welcome to have them, Conservative members most likely, on video putting out the bait, right? Because it's only going to help him further on. I think at the end of the day, it's just simple. Go in there and tell the truth. He's got that on his side. Some of it's going to be subjective. Some of the advice will be subjective, and you could argue one way or another about it. But the fact is that you can defend what you did, and that's the whole point of this exercise, is go in there and be transparent. It'd be one of the first few times he's been transparent, but it would be the right time to be transparent. If he becomes evasive, then he's digging his own grave.
Mm-hmm. And Tim Powers, picking up on something Cam touched on there, what is the opposition party going to do? How are they going to treat this exercise? What do you think the Conservative strategy is there?
On which, sorry? Which aspect?
On the Prime Minister's testimony. Do you think they're going to be pulling clips and hammering social media with every little thing he said?
They're going to do what they've done with Mendocino, right. Dave. They're going to look for inconsistencies, right? They're going to look for government overreach. They're going to play to the themes. What's the most oft-said word in Poilievre's campaign? Either gatekeeper or freedom. So it's going to try and link the two. Are the gatekeepers, were they trying to infringe our general freedoms? Was this Emergencies Act and overreach? Was it really necessary? That's where they're going to go. Government decision making, and try and link it to, well, they could have prevented this in the first place. There was ineptitude. They used the Emergencies Measure Act. They overreached because they didn't know how to manage the crisis otherwise.
Okay, and gatekeepers, I'm glad you said that word. What a great segue. Why are the Conservatives so fixated on the Bank of Canada? Story from Bloomberg. Conservatives say Bank of Canada deserves ruthless scrutiny. I don't understand this. We don't elect the Bank of Canada governor. We elect the Prime Minister. So what is the strategy here? It doesn't make sense to me to paint the bank as the problem instead of the government, but maybe I'm missing something. Any thoughts on that?
You just answered your own question. You just answered your own question.
So you don't get it either, Tim?
Pardon?
You don't get it either, then?
I get it, Dave. I'm not an icon like you, buddy. I'm just trying. I'm just a poor Newfoundlander. But I do know, as a poor Newfoundlander, that and this is what because people don't understand the bank, and they don't understand how it works and why it's important and why stability and it's non-political, all of that. That's not to say people are stupid. I'm not saying that, or ignorant. It's just the Bank of Canada isn't part of their daily lives until we deal with inflation and recession. So it's very easy to make a broad public argument to say, you know what, these guys, guy now runs at Tiff Macklin, he's out of touch, he doesn't get this, we're going to be hold them more accountable, let's do that. Yeah, and that sounds great to everybody. That's could be, certainly a regulated institution like the Bank of Canada could have more scrutiny, but the whole point of the Bank of Canada is it's supposed to have independence to make the best monetary policy decisions that it can. So that's why you can attack somebody that who people don't understand, and define that person in terms they do understand and make that work to your benefit.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to land. Cam, what do you think?
I honestly, I think it plays into that, frankly, that convoy sentiment of institutions out to get them, and frankly, New World Order and all that garbage. I was just doing a quick reading before we got on this morning about this. As I saw one journalist correctly point out, in reply to Mr. Scheer, in his commentary, the Bank of Canada is doing right now exactly what it did under the Harper government in 08-09. And I didn't hear Mr. Scheer going on about ruthless oversight at that point in time. He seemed pretty fine with it at that point. I wonder what was different. But you know what? When you look at why we have an independent Bank of Canada governor, look what's happened in the UK in the last week, right? You saw the elected government running the economy off a cliff and almost costing millions of Britons their pensions, right? And the bank stepped in and said, whoa, no, and did something to stop it. You want to see the other side of that? Go look at Turkey. Turkey's gone through 5 or 6 bank governors in the last 5 years because the President Erdogan over there keeps demanding that they do exactly what he wants, and he keeps firing them until he gets the right one. And their economy's been hit big time. You talk about inflation. The value of the Turkish lira has gone through the floor. So and again, that's what the politicians brought on, not the bank itself. The politicians brought on. So to me, this is supposed to be that buffer. So when you're attacking it, you're undermining some of these bedrock institutions and bring them into doubt. It's one thing to say, you know what, I don't trust you. You know what, I'm a social democrat. My instinct is not usually to trust bankers, right? But at the end of the day, this guy has the credentials. Yeah. Right? Yeah, he has credentials I don't have, that Mr. Scheer doesn't have, that Mr. Poilievre doesn't have. To me, it's kind of like what we went through in the pandemic with second-guessing doctors all over the place. I don't have a background in epidemiology or medicine. I'm not going to question the people that do. Right? Yeah. I'll ask questions. I'm not going to sit there and say, you don't like talking about, because they know more than I do on this topic. Sometimes being political leadership involves the humility to say, you know what, I don't know this, or I don't know more than you. Let me learn and listen. That might be the better approach for Mr. Scheer and Mr. Poilievre on this. At least when Mr. Harper was in that position, he could say, I'm an economist. I have education and background in this, which probably is part of the reason why you didn't see Stephen Harper taking pot shots at Mark Carney when he was the Bank of Canada governor.
Well said. Okay, we have to stop. This is your political fix. Cam Holmstrom and Tim Powers are with me. This is David Smith filling in for Rob Snow. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after the break here on City News.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
More of a push for Indigenous languages being heard, seen, whether it's in the media or just on signs on the road. Culture and language is such an important peace to reconciliation, and I feel like that's the goal that I want to see. So just more Indigenous languages being lifted and promoted and encouraged and spoken and just heard.
Hi, I'm Meg from AIM Fitness, and I'm here with my buddy Fit Finley. Join us every week for Fit Over 50. We'll take you through some low-impact and high-intensity workouts designed to improve your strength and your balance. All you'll need is a resistance band, some light hand weights, and also your water bottle and a sturdy chair. Tune in right here on Rogers TV and let us be part of your weekly routine.
Enjoy the fresh outdoors. Play an important role in the lives of school-age children. Get paid to make a difference in your community. Become a crossing guard. We are currently recruiting crossing guards for the school year. We offer a competitive wage with various perks and opportunities for bonuses. Join the Ottawa Safety Council in keeping kids safe in the nation's capital. Find out more at crossing-guard.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the show. David Smith here filling in. This is your political fix. Joining me on the line, Cam Holmstrom, left-leaning political strategist. Nipaway Strategies is his firm. Tim Powers is here from Summa Strategies, a little more on the right side of things. And the next story I'd really like to bounce off of you guys, if I can, is this scoop from Blacklock's reporter on Marco Mendicino. I suspect this may be making its way into the more mainstream news coverage over the coming days. I think it's a bombshell. So basically, Marco Mendicino has been caught backdating a key document to cover up for the fact that an act which he said was in effect was not actually in effect. So I'll read a little bit from the story here, if you'll let me just for a moment. This is concerning the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants Act. The act was not immediately proclaimed into force, but the name of the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants was already trademarked and used by a private Vancouver company. So there was a trademark dispute over the name, and that's where this story comes out. Records show Friday, November 20th, 2020. Crown lawyers attended federal court injunction hearing in the trademark dispute, and staff in Mendicino's department stressed the importance of proclaiming the act in force. It was a key first step. So the government lawyers were, quote, duty bound to bring to the court's attention the development and proclamation of the act. Lawyers instead used backdated documents to pretend the act was already in force. And this is the craziest part. The Privy Council office, on the same day as the November 20th trademark hearing, published a garbled order in council on its website implying the act was in force. It wasn't, and the notice included a date-modified entry of April 31st, 2017. There are only 30 days in April. What is going on in Mendicino's office? So this is obviously malfeasance. I've seen lawyers on social media saying he should be disbarred for this. It's falsified documents. They falsify the documents to mislead a federal court. Do you think this is going to go anywhere, Tim?
I don't know. It's as described by Blacklock's, as you read it there, David. That ought to be very concerning for the government. Look, I think we're all familiar with documents being backdated in other circumstances. However, the difference here is this is obviously government legislation. The outright inconsistency, contradictions, choose your term, and it's poison that's associated with it that you've read as evidenced by Justice Response. Yeah, that's not good. And it also speaks to, and Cam and I have talked about this before elsewhere, I mean, this government sometimes is just its own worst enemy. So disorganized, not paying attention to details. This is the kind of stuff that could sink a minister and, again, put a government in a bit of a defensive crisis position. Not good.
See, my opinion on this is if it was a different minister, maybe a first offense, fine. This is Mendicino, already caught.
Yeah, it's public safety.
Already caught with inconsistencies in his stories on the implementation of the Emergencies Act. Already implicated in this business with Brenda Lucki and the inquiry into the Portapique mass shooting. And now this is strike number 3. Cam, what do you think?
See, this is interesting to me because to me, this is one of these. This in particular, if it all bears out as reported, to me, this isn't even a 3-strike. This is a 1-strike offense. There are certain things that you don't get to screw up and then get to walk away from, right? Like again, at the end of the day, if the story is as reported, they sent government lawyers into a court to not give the full and honest truth, right?
Yep.
There's no excuse for that. There's no circumstance where that's excusable, right? And it's just that simple. When I read this, I thought back during the Harper days when they used to run TV ads before the budget was passed, right? And saying, here's all these lovely things we're going to do, and at the bottom there'd be a tagline, basically pointing out that none of this will happen until the budget actually passes, right? But that's a TV ad, right? You can say it's dishonest. You can almost say it's kind of backdating it to a sense, but it's a TV ad, right? That's not a court of law, right? Like that's a real bright red line that says you just don't cross that because as an Indigenous person, dealing Indigenous rights, you talk a lot about the honor of the Crown, right?
Yes.
Their dealings with people, right?
Yes.
And they're expected to go to court and act in an honorable way. And if you are backdating documents and doing stuff like that backhandedly and a chance to try even if it's clear up a mess on a trademark dispute, it still dishonors the Crown. And to me, if you do that, you don't get 3 strikes. That's the only one you get. You're gone.
I don't know. I'm just so jaded with this government now. Like nothing seems to stick to these guys, but this is it's crazy. It's just great. He's a lawyer. He won't comment on the story. And it seems like his staff filed false documents in federal court. What? To save him a little bit of embarrassment because the name of his project was already trademarked and nobody checked that?
But David, that speaks to the earlier conversation we were having, right? It's one thing to not know better and to make a mistake, right? He's someone as a lawyer who knows. He should know better. He should be demanding better. I know I worked for a lawyer as an MP, and he was very clear on, double crossing those I's and double crossing those T's and checking those I's, because he wanted to be sure, if we're going to get something wrong, it's not going to be something I'm an expert on, right?
Yeah.
So that comes back to him. If he's not insisting on that in his office, or if this happens and he's in full knowledge of it, sorry, you don't get a second chance after that one.
Yep. Tim, any final thoughts on Mr. Mendicino's future?
I would just say one thing you'll want to correct, Dave. The implication on the Portapique inquiry was actually around Bill Blair.
Sorry.
Blair
yeah, apologies.
Yeah, I mean, Marco has enough trouble.
Yeah. Sorry, Bill.
Nonetheless, but again, it's this pattern with this government, right? Oh, no, we're doing things right, and then you discover afterwards, not so much. And this is, again, the next election. This is something that Poilievre, the Conservatives, and the New Democrats will need to prosecute, that this government, when it loses...
Call the Rogers TV Viewer Response